Great, thank you. Okay, so let's just take a couple centering breaths. And with this intention, return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Try that. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. So as we begin, just like to dedicate the merit of our learning together to the speedy and complete healing of Rabbi Mark, Harav Dov Ber Ben Dvorah, who had surgery today and a general anesthetic, and also to lift up the soul of Ira Bornstein. I think, Sandy, maybe you're sitting in Ira's office. Ira passed away. Maybe you're in your office. But Ira returned more permanently to the land of his soul. You're currently muted, so please unmute yourself, Sandy, so you can share.
I said I turned Ira's office into my Jewish library.
Wonderful. So may our Torah study help with the updraft for his soul to return to its home as he's making his way in these weeks following his death. So my first question to those who were here last week, which is Steve and Daniel and Shula, if she's in the room, is there a little shtickler, something that you took with you or you've been thinking about, or how would you sum up for those who weren't here what we talked about last time? Sorry to put you on the spot, Steve.
Okay. Well, the one thing that stuck with me was this discussion that we had about what there's references in the passage that we read about changing your name and that having a power to sort of change the decree of the high holiday season, which is not something that's in the typical liturgy. We talk about prayer and doing Teshuva. We don't talk about changing our names normally. And so we talked about what that meant. We didn't talk about why it's not in the liturgy, which is an interesting question. We didn't talk about that.
Thank you. Great. Well, maybe I'll ask that as a next question to folks. But Daniel or Shula, would you like to share anything about what you remember?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Just the name of the series, and sometimes the first two Words are self-evident in this season, but tzedaka, the third word, perhaps not as much so. And we talked about, what does giving, charity have to do with this, and that you might get the wrong impression that it's about money, and that's not it. It's more just the expression of your values and what, where you put your money, or put your money where your mouth is, as they say. So that was one big takeaway for me.
Great. And we will focus in more fully on tzedaka in a future session. It's not so much a focus tonight, but thank you for raising that excellent point. And Gideon, is Shula there? Hang on a sec. Let me unmute you. You have to unmute because we can't hear you. Oh, she's joining separately. I see.
Yeah, Shula's at her computer so she can control the sound better, and because of her hearing, and she's either there or she's on her way.
Yeah, she just got here. That's great. So Shula, I was just asking, any highlights from last time, or things you've been thinking about since last week that you want to share with the group to bring them up to speed? And welcome, Sarah and Rob. Good to see you. Shula, we need to at the least hear you. We don't need to see you, but we do need to hear you. There we go. Now we can see you, and we still need to hear you.
We're here.
Great. I'm glad I can hear you. That's good.
There we go.
Shula, can you unmute? Oh, there we go. Go for it, Shula. Anything you want to bring to surface from our conversation last week?
Did you get a question? That's because your sound is so low.
My sound is off.
Oh.
That's it. Now we can hear you. Try again.
I didn't hear the question and my sound is off.
Also, it's not you.
Hello?
Turn your sound on.
Oh, well, that's an issue because you've got two computers in the same room. You need to have only one of them giving or receiving sound. But the question was, is there anything from last week's conversation that you want to highlight or bring to the group, or a question that you've been sitting with since last week?
A question for last
Maybe you could type it.
We're having some kind
I see that. Hang on.
Somebody has their
I'm going to type it into the chat for you and ask you to write back. So a question for everybody. So what Steve was referring to was we looked at a text from the Talmud, which said that basically Teshuva, or changing one's deeds, Tefila, crying out, which we interpret as meaning crying out in prayer, Tzedaka, or righteous giving, and a change of one's name can all affect a change in our fates. This is the text from the Talmud. And something like that, but not exactly the same, is what we tell one another throughout the days of awe. Teshuva, Tefila, Tzedaka, just those three, it doesn't mention anything about changing one's name. We say throughout the days of awe that these are what counts. So Steve is bringing the question of what happened to changing our names? Why is that left out? of why is that left out of the liturgy if that's a part of the source text that claim is resting on? So does anyone have any thoughts about that before we dive in?
Well, my suspicion is better not talk.
Maybe you could type it in. The problem is you need to have only one of your computers with the sound on, either receiving the sound or being able to speak into the sound. Otherwise, you're going to get the feedback because you're in the same room.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Funny, I didn't think of that.
Okay, now we can't hear you at all. Anyone want to say anything about changing one's name? Dan,
And can you repeat the question, please?
why Steve raised the point that we leave out this changing of the name idea. Why do we leave out the changing of the name?
I have one quick idea, that because you shouldn't do that in the year, or you may confuse the teshuva if it makes sense, right? You have to own up to what you did with that name in that year, if you will.
Okay, nice. Anyone else have an idea that they want to add?
Right, yes, it does say, I am not the one who did all those bad things. I am a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I told you a couple of name change stories last time, so I will not say any more this time.
I think though that's an interesting feature is that actually when we raise the topic of name changes, it takes up a lot of people's attention. Actually, that in a way that's actually a more accessible way in, and I do agree that possibly part of the reason that it's avoided is like maybe that's too easy a fix. All I need to do is change my name, and it's as if I'm a new person and I'm not the one who's done all these things. That's actually avoiding the important work of Teshuva more than it's doing Teshuva. But also, my experiences discussing this in a couple different classes is people could easily become fixated on that part and, forget about the Teshuva and the Tefila and the Tzedaka. So what I want to do now is share with you. I sent to you by email, except for Sarah and Rob, and maybe Daniel, if you know Sarah and Rob's email addresses, perhaps you could forward the source sheet PDF I just sent to you. And I did send it to you, Miriam. It's in your email. But I'm going to share my screen anyway. So let's have a little look. So as you may have noticed, the title of this class was, Can They Change? Teshuva, Tefila, and Tzedaka. Can they change our fates? Oops, wrong way. And there's definitely some tension around this idea. It does seem a sort of almost magical claim that Teshuva, that actions that we can take might affect what's going to happen to us. So to begin our conversation, I wanted to share with you a couple of different sources. One of these is from Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg, who's a rabbi in London, Rabbi Mark's rabbi. This is source number 3. And the next two are by Rabbi Alan Liu, who wrote a wonderful book called This is Real and You're Completely Unprepared, which is a companion to the Days of Awe. So would someone like to read for us this source number 3, which is on the screen? You give me a wave. Or Anne, fantastic, please.
Who's reading?
Anne, I believe, is reading.
Oh, yeah, I was going to volunteer, but sure.
Oh, sorry. Yes, please.
I
Yeah.
sometimes think of the decree as the basic fact of our mortal. There's something in the front of it.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know why. Hang on. This is my cursor is in front of the thing. Mercury's in retrograde, people. It's glitchy. There we go. There, you can see it now.
I sometimes think of the decree as the basic fact of our mortality. We are susceptible to sickness and pain. We suffer and die. We witness others doing the same. We avert its evil by living our life to the best of our ability. Living as best we can is our most worthy response to our mortality.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. And before we discuss, let's also read. Would somebody else like to read what Rabbi Lou has to add on this topic?
I'll read.
Great, thanks.
Rabbi Alan Liu, this is real and you are completely unprepared. The liturgy is obviously derived from the Talmud. Both claim that righteous deeds, prayer, and turning will modify the divine decree that has been issued on Rosh Hashanah, but the operative verbs are strikingly different. The Talmud claims that these activities will actually cause the decree to be torn up, ma'akirim. That which was decreed to happen will not in fact happen. The liturgy, however, makes a very different claim, namely that prayer, righteousness, and Teshuva will not change what happens to us, rather they will change us. We will understand what happens differently. These activities will not tear up the decree, rather they will transform ma'avirim, the evil of the decree. Spiritual practice won't change what happens, rather it will help us to experience what happens not as evil, but simply as what happens. Spiritual practice will help us to understand that everything that happens, even the decree of death, flows from God.
Beautiful, thank you. And I'll just add this last little quote here where he says, Teshuva doesn't change what happens, and it doesn't change the way we are. It merely changes the way we see things. Yeah. And so my question to you, and I think you should all be able to open the source sheets yourself so you can continue to look at it while we can also see each other, is what do you think? Do you agree with these rabbis who say, you know, it's not so much that it's going to change what will happen, it's more that it'll change our ability in how we respond to it? Agree, disagree, something else entirely? What do you think?
Well, anyhow.
Oh, we're having that feedback problem again.
Yeah.
Oh no, better. Carry on.
I'm going to try backing off and seeing if that helps.
It's good.
Okay. Any act that we do that we are particularly brought into doing because of the moment of Tshuva, it's going to change the future in a way that if we hadn't decided to do that act, the future would have been. So that if we didn't give tzedakah, the future would have gone one way. But if we did give tzedakah, the future would have gone another way. Perhaps a tiny way different, but it would have gone another way. Whether that would make us see the future different, see life differently, or would make the harshness of what was going to happen be less harsh, I can't say, but I can say that it would definitely change the world somehow.
Great, thank you.
So we do what we can in the hopes that it will change the world for the better. or change us for the better, or both.
Thank you. I really appreciate someone. I see you, Sarah. I'll come to you in a sec.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you saying, no, these actions do change the world. It's not just that they change our perception of the world. We do have the power to make a difference. And we shouldn't just think about tzedakah, giving charity or giving justly, as something that changes our world. We should remember how much it can change the world of the recipients. That's a very concrete, practical example of how we literally are changing the future when we give. And similarly, as you say, when we make a determination to do something differently, to fix something in ourselves, to fix something in our behavior, that does make a change. It makes a change in our lives, and quite possibly it makes a change in how we can act in the future and thus impact other people. So thank you so much. And Sarah.
I think that when Rabbi Lou makes the point that the liturgy makes a different claim, that the operative verb is different, the first smacks of magic. If you do, you put in A, you put in B, you put in C, Teshuva, Tzedaka, Tefila, boom, you're off the hook. Where in fact, it is such a special time that we are focusing on ourselves, we are focusing on our world, that to work on our perception is very critical. So if our perception of what we can do differently and how it might impact things sounds to me a lot more pragmatic, if that's the right word, than, magic, a little of these three elements. I understand why we're told that this cancels the decree, but in fact, I think it's a little misleading.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So holding an opposing view, what do you think, others? Anne, please. And then
I'm just feeling conflicted here about asking about something from last week because I wasn't here. I don't know what the decree is that's being referred to.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Great question. Never hesitate to ask what seems like a relevant and explanatory question. You're doing a favor to everyone else as well. So there's an idea that on Rosh Hashanah, our fate for the year to come is determined, but it's sort of hanging in the balance until Yom Kippur. And as much as this whole period leading up to Rosh Hashanah is a time for Teshuva, for fixing our ways and these practices, additional prayer and additional tzedakah, it's really these 10 days, or really 7 days that fall between the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and then Yom Kippur is the 10th day, that is the period which are called the 10 days of Teshuva, that if we really, really focus hard during that time and fix up, then God might reconsider. And whatever's been decreed about our fate could get ameliorated. And we say throughout the liturgy of the days of awe, B'Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, uv'yom tzom kippur yichatemun, which means on Rosh Hashanah it's written down, and on Yom Kippur it's sealed, signed, sealed, delivered. Actually, it's not delivered until Hanukkah, say the Hasidim, but this 10-day period, we have the opportunity to potentially shift what's been sort of the initial judgment's been passed on Rosh Hashanah, which is also called Yom Hadin, Judgment Day. Miriam, you were waving before.
I think it's all true. And I think it weaves, maybe like the candle wick again. I think that we need to own our responsibility for our behaviors and address the sources, the how and whys, the work of Rosh Hashanah or coming into Rosh Hashanah. Take responsibility, one, but also, and second, if we change how we lens the inner talk, then the outer world also changes for us. And if we lens our inner talk in negativity or in habit patterns that don't serve us, we feel ickier in the world. And if we change that how we hold things, how we see how we're treated, how we feel, how we want to behave, that changes us and the world. And the third thought is, well, there are four actually always, but anyway, the third thought is the pebble in the lake makes ripples that affect all of us, for each of us, both in community and in family and in the greater world. And the fourth thought is karma. And I'm sure we all know that. And that kind of winds around how we behave and what we do in the world and how we take responsibility for it or receive the response from it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So one thing I sort of hear you hinting at, or maybe that I just want to add, is for me, rather than seeking God when I'm trying to talk to God, rather than seeking it as something that's beyond myself, I understand that my own consciousness is a facet of the divine consciousness, divine awareness, and it's like the portal in that's most immediate to me. And so my experience of, everything that happens, I experience, or my entire reality, I experience through my sense perceptions and my neural network and the meaning that I make of the phenomena that I experience.
Precisely. Thank you. I agree with you.
So
on both things you said, source also. We are source.
We are source, and when we adjust our perception of events, it actually does adjust what those events are, since they don't necessarily have an external reality for us beyond how we experience them. I'm not saying you can pray your way out of famine and genocide. I'm not sort of suggesting a spiritual bypass, but I am saying everything, our entire reality comes through the frame of our perception. So it's definitely worth working on the frame of our perception. And to me, it's really worth not trying to think of God as something out there, but rather as something that I can access through going inside. Daniel, I see you nodding. Do you want to say something, or you're just like right on? I agree.
Yeah, I'm just following everything and nodding. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone want to say anything else on this topic of, in what way can these behaviors or practices change the world, change us, change the future, or not?
Well, I'm a total beginner with the days of awe. I have not done this practice at this time of year before. So what I say may be very simple-minded or very ignorant. Anyway, I think it's a very strange perspective that one's fate for the next year would be sealed at any point. And I'm not arguing with the Talmud or Torah. I'm not particularly putting forth any great philosophical challenge. I'm just speaking from my own moment here. Because if what we're saying is that our actions, our thoughts, our intentions change how we perceive the world and ourselves, then why wouldn't there always be an opening all year long, 24/7, to the possibility of changing one's fate? I don't really get this being sealed. It feels strange, but I'm sure that I'm missing a lot of important subtleties here.
No, I think that's a very, 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 very fine response. Thank you. Great point. Why even think about things being fixed at this certain point in time? Is there any benefit to be had from that kind of idea? What do you guys think?
Well, this reminds me of a talk I heard last night on a Zoom with Minyan Oneg Shabbat, which you may have heard of or not. They refer to themselves as a Zoomagogue. and a rabbi that I very much have always appreciated, and was very lucky to be able to daven once or twice when he was a congregational rabbi, Rabbi Daniel Siegel. And Miriam says she's heard of him. Okay. And Bracha has heard of him. Okay. Yeah. He was using a text, boy, I don't remember exactly which rabbi. I think it was a rabbi of Dinoff. Maybe it was Elimelech of Dinoff. Gideon, do you remember which rabbi?
No, I think you might have it.
Okay, let's say it was Elimelech of Dinoff. Anyhow, it was a Dinover rabbi. Rabbi who'd written a long text, and we read a good chunk of it. And he was, remember, he's a Hasidic rabbi, I believe a rather late Hasidic rabbi, who, like many of the Hasidic rabbis, was concerned about the general welfare of the people around him. And he had found a way to make Teshuva less a huge event at the high holidays, but something that you should do constantly. So that every day you should be sure you had done some Teshuva, some repentance. Every day. I suppose if there was really nothing that you could think of to repent that day, you could skip that day. But the rabbi's book was talking about the importance of ongoing repentance so that you didn't end up on the high holidays with a huge amount of repentance to do. I thought this was lovely. This is the turning that Rabbi Lu says. Righteous deeds, prayer, and turning, Teshuva.
Thank you.
That is great, and I think it's important to remember exactly that, and to remember that we have, for instance, such practices as before going to sleep at night, doing a review of the day, a soul accounting, and in some traditions, actually, people do say the vidui, the confession that's said on Yom Kippur, actually do say it as a nightly practice. There's also the idea of doing an accounting every week before Shabbat of what's occurred that week. And similarly, every day before the new moon, at the end of each month, which in some people practice as what's called a Yom Kippur Katan, a miniature Yom Kippur, and some people even fast on that day to help, increase their focus and make it more clear that this is like a Yom Kippur. Hi, Jerry. We're just talking about the importance of continual Teshuva rather than leaving it, front-loading it all at the high holidays and then forgetting about it and just doing our thing throughout the year. Because Anne asked a very good question. What is this idea of like our fates being sealed on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur? Why would there ever be a stopping? Isn't it always a perpetual process where if we do Teshuva, Tefila, Tzedaka, things like that, we have the power to change both our experience of reality and the objective reality we're existing within. So that's where we're up to. Daniel, I saw you unmute yourself before.
Yeah, so I want to add to what you were saying. There's a cheshbon, there's an accounting, and whether you think of it in secular terms, where at the end of the year you have a salary and then you have to pay taxes next year, right? And you can't just, yes, you can make quarterly payments or something, but at some point you have to settle the year and move on. And so that, whether it's weekly, monthly, or annual, but I do think that annual one is so big because that really is how we measure our lives.
Great. And we have that as well in the way not every culture has birthdays, but in our civilization, we're pretty into birthdays. That something happens when we come back to that day of the year that's the anniversary of our birth, and we give ourselves a new name in a sense of like, oh, I was 40, now I'm 41 or whatever. We consider ourselves, entering a new cycle. Similarly, we're doing that kind of annual accounting when we come around to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I'll ask the question I asked again, which is, are there any benefits? I think Daniel's, answering that question. I'll ask it again for Jerry's benefit and anybody else's. Are there any benefits to seeing this as being, a once a year kind of focus for Teshuva, even though Teshuva is an ongoing process, obviously?
Well, if we're doing Teshuva every day, we are not necessarily reading the text that we will read on Rosh Hashanah. And it reminds us of things that we've forgotten to do Teshuva for. And there's also a feeling of being in the group that makes everything more intensified. So I think being in the big group at Rosh Hashanah is extremely important.
Thank you. Great point. So we might be doing our individual Teshuva day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. But there's something collective that happens when we get together. And I think we were mentioning last week as well, like actually being in a big group of people can be somewhat of a elevating, or at least changes our state, whether we enjoy it or not. Like it's different. It's different when we come together and everyone's together on the High Holy Days.
And sorry, I want to add one more thing, that Adam HaRishon is born on, created on Rosh Hashanah. So in a way, it's collectively humanity's day to remember, hey, even that first day we had problems. We have to keep that in mind also. And so it's 1 year, but it's all of the 5,784 years in one day.
Thank you, Adam HaRishon, primordial man, the first human. Thank you. That's exactly where I was going to go with it. So there's this idea that actually Rosh Hashanah doesn't commemorate the creation of the world. It commemorates the creation of humanity. And so it's a collective accounting and a collective weighing of the fate of the whole human race. And as we're the dominant species on this planet, to some extent, the fate of the whole planet is being decided on a collective level, even though on an individual level, we certainly can be doing adjustments throughout. And according to, you know, the mythology, the human beings were created and went through their whole saga with eating from the forbidden fruit and being forgiven, actually, is the important part as well. They did wrong, got found out, and were forgiven, and also received a consequence, which was being exiled from the garden. But this whole sort of microcosmic karmic drama of we're born, we mess things up, we're forgiven, and it has consequences, is what we're connecting with during these days of awe. Now, I recognize this could be all very problematic, and you might have feelings and not like this at all, or disagree, and I'd love to hear from you. And also, I'm going to post into the chat a little section from the Nitivot Shalom, who's a contemporary Hasidic rabbi, talking about the cycles of Teshuva that go. I said it already, basically, that we do Teshuva every evening, every Friday, every day before new moon. He also points out the verse that says that God is renewing creation every single day, that it's actually in the nature of creation to be continually renewed, and we can always tap into this energy of renewal, that's what's causing the universe to continue to exist, and to be fresh and developing. Sandy?
I guess I come with a different perspective, having lost my husband a month ago. When he was first diagnosed with brain cancer 3 years ago, in July of 2020, the first set of high holidays was also pandemic, so it was challenging because of that, but it was also challenging because my husband was given 12 to 18 months to live. And I'm always been somebody who respected Jewish traditions, but found everything associated with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur very hard to swallow. I didn't think it was that simple. My husband was a good person. He was religious in certain respects, not in others, but he led a good life. And it didn't, while we were able to live for 2.5 years better than most, which was a blessing, the last 6-7 months were horrific. And what he suffered through, Rabbi Sarah saw. She saw him right before he went into a coma. I wouldn't wish on anybody. So I struggle with all of this. And maybe this is, maybe it's premature for me to be in something like this, but I have to try and sort it out before the high holidays. And I really don't even know what I hate to say it, I don't even know what I believe anymore. And I'm somebody that has a bachelor and master's degree in Jewish studies. I can't really sort it out. It's Ira died at 68. His mother's still alive at 94. Just very hard to piece it all together. And I don't think it's that simple. I don't think he didn't check off a box and his fate was sealed. I can't accept that. It's beyond comprehension to me. What happened? And obviously there's people far younger than him that die. Some painful deaths, some not so painful deaths, but the neurological death, I gotta say, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Just a terrible thing that he experienced. And the whole family had to watch. So I don't know, I struggle with all this. I can't rationalize in my mind how if he had done X, Y, or Z, maybe his fate would have been differently. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. It is what it is. I'll move on. But it's hard for me to accept what you're all talking about. Just I don't even know what to think. I don't even know, to be honest with you, what I'll do when I go to services. I don't know. It's very, very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and for injecting that note of realism. It's really real. And some traditions take the view that actually our fate is sealed. You know, the length of our life is known from the outset, from our conception. There's actually nothing like, everything is foreordained. I think in our, sort of secular society that we're in now, we're more comfortable with the idea that there are things we can do to change the trajectory of our lives. But then that leads to the difficult question of, like, well, then why do bad things happen? We can't say that that's because that person culpable for their horrific suffering. And, in some ways, maybe it is more comfortable to say, it's decreed on high. Ira Bornstein's gonna be diagnosed with glioblastoma at the age of 65, and he's going to die at the age of 68, and that's just the way it is. It's written in the stars, and there's nothing he or anyone else can do to change that. That's just how his life is going to go. I don't think we're terribly comfortable with that idea either. So I have another question for you, and feel free to keep talking. And I think we all wrestle with these questions. I don't think that anyone feels, oh yeah, it's, obvious. I think that there is a psychological value to, I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but the pageantry of these days, the intensity of the focus, that it is a collective time for focus on doing what we can to improve ourselves and to improve the state of the world, and to make a concerted effort to pray together. Judaism certainly believes in the power of prayer, and it certainly says that the power of collective prayer is that much greater, and also that it's easier to pray in a group than it is to pray alone. At least, well, anyway, we could debate that. In a future session, we'll have more of a focus on prayer. But maybe it does nothing, but it helps us to feel that we are, that we're trying. And we're giving each other permission, and we're giving each other company, and we have a certain ritual form for it, and we blow the shofar, and we eat apples and honey, and we fast, and that we have a ritual response to this sort of collective wrestling with mortality. Which another idea is that Rosh Hashanah is like the birth, it's like a microcosm of birth, and Yom Kippur is like a microcosm of death. And quite a lot of the imagery of Yom Kippur actually has to do with death. Some folks say that's why they wear white, like the shrouds, and we don't eat and drink, because it's like we're dead. We're already beyond the needs of the body. So it's a way for us as human beings to wrestle with these questions of mortality, fate, change, justice, or the lack thereof. Whether or not it, changes anything on high, as it were, it's helpful for us as human beings.
I don't know if you addressed this last week or earlier. One of the things that really bothers me on Yom Kippur is your fate is sealed. Who shall live? Who shall die? Who shall be killed by stoning, and so on and so forth. That one really bothers me.
Say more.
It's like, yeah, I think the tradition is beautiful. The making us look at how we did in a year is also wonderful. I think it's a great tradition. But to then say, okay, what I do will seal my fate over the next year. I just have trouble with that concept.
What would you rather? What's your truth claim?
It's a good question. I think it's just, try to live as good and just life as you can. Obviously, there are things that happen, like Sandra was saying, that you have zero control over. But think about, and this, I know this comes every Shabbos when we do the Amida. Think about what you're doing. But is one day where it's the stamp goes on the book, so to speak, and it doesn't make a difference what happens the rest of the year.
I want to say something. I think about this a lot too. And I work in the insurance industry on the property and casualty side, but I think about the life insurance industry as a metaphor for this all the time. It's like we have very good data, and some of the world's largest organizations, they place massive bets on their portfolios every year to finance death. And if you go to an actuary and you say, okay, in this population, this many people are probably going to die of these different causes. Now tell me who. There's some, you come up against limits to what you can know. No actuary can do that. No company can say that, right? Then it gets really perverse, right? Then people go, that's how it used to be, right? People would actually kill for that claim. So but at the same time, they're saying, yeah, we know this many people are going to die.
That's true. I mean, you look at statistics, X number of people will perish based on what has happened in the past. But to say that fate of what's going to happen to you in the next 12 months is sealed on September 25th is, I really struggle with that.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah.
This year happens to be my birthday.
Even more problematic. Yeah. Yeah.
September 25th is my birthday too.
Oh,
Wow,
okay.
you both have the merit to have Yom Kippur on your birthday. How wonderful! Everyone will be coming to your big celebration. And Yom Kippur is also seen as a joyful day. That it's a day of spiritual elevation. And I think, oh, sorry, the dogs are barking. Death obviously is something that we resist, and something that is very hard for us to encounter when our loved ones die, especially if we have to watch them suffer and lose their capacities. But death in itself is not a bad thing. And I think it's important not to see death as a punishment. Death is universal. Death is just the nature of the fabric of our reality. And without death, there wouldn't be any space for, literally, if people didn't die, we would swiftly run out of space for any new people. And it's possible, and various religions make truth claims about this, that whatever happens after we die is a lot more pleasant in one way or another than what we encounter in this reality. We just can't remember it, But it might be that we actually understand the nature of all things, and it's blissful, and we don't have any of the struggles or suffering. Yes, it's very hard for those of us who are left when our loved ones die. But maybe death isn't actually problematic. It just is, some people are going to die, some people are going to live. Miriam, I see you leaning forward. Does that mean you're going to say something? But because if you are, you need to unmute yourself.
There it is. Yes, I was typing to the chat. Amen.
Oh,
I mean, it is simply part of the grid, and it is also part of the that we have feelings, and that we suffer because we love, but we can't really change love, but we can't change death. Or, I mean, I don't think death is a karmic thing because everyone dies. No matter how we behave, everyone walks out of this life grid. So it's just, maybe it's better. You know, bless my daddy. He used to say that this level of existence, one of the higher realms of hell.
yeah, right. Right. Aldous Huxley also said maybe this world is some other planet's hell, which I think is worth considering. Yeah. And we have it relatively good, all of us.
Relatively, oh, yes, all of us, blessed be. First world suffering. We have the opportunity to have this conversation.
Right.
We're not trying to survive, you know, we're so, but it also hurts when you lose your husband. And just lastly, I agree with you, Jerry. I don't believe, well, I'm not sure you said this, but I don't believe that our seat is filled for the next year by that moment in Yom Kippur. I think that there's a direction that's happening that we're all on and somehow working with. But no, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we find this sort of overly simplistic. I will say also, interestingly, you know, I think all of us are fairly regular synagogue goers, or how, you know, we're not the people who only go on the high holy days, but it often strikes me as a bit ironic that people go on the high holy days, and it's actually some of the most alienating liturgy, in my opinion, that we have, and it's very medieval. You know, this theology of fate being sealed comes from the Talmud, as we saw, but a lot of the liturgy, all the extra poetry and stuff, is from the medieval period, and in large, there is like a large strain of response to Christian theology that's there in the High Holy Day liturgy. The focus on the binding of Isaac, the sacrifice or near sacrifice of Isaac, is like a Jewish answer to Christian crucifixion theology. And it's like, oh yeah, well, we also have this story of like, and we read these stories about these 10 rabbis who are martyred in gruesome ways by the Romans on Yom Kippur. And so there's sort of like fixation on like expiation through suffering, and also of there being like a great judge who's weighing all balances. It's a theology that comes from a period of time that's very different in its assumptions and worldview from our own. And I think that's worth recognizing. Okay, let's pivot. I want to ask you all, what actually is Teshuva? The word in Hebrew literally means answer. It's a response, it's an answer. It comes from the root to turn or to return. Yeshuv is to turn. But what do you understand by the term teshuva? What does it mean to you? And actually, why doesn't everyone, if you're able, type it into the chat so you can all think at once and all say something at once. And Max, I don't know if you are listening, just not showing us your beautiful face, but you also could type something in for us. Can I just give folks another minute to think and write? Thanks, Dan. You've given me the ownership of the group, right? So it's not going to end when you leave. Great.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. I think we're going to 8:15, so I hope everybody else also thinks we're going till 8:15. Giving everybody a minute more to write.
Somehow mine all disappeared and I'm too slow at typist.
Okay, well, I'll ask you in a sec to say it aloud, and
I'll see if I can remember. It was lovely. I liked it.
okay, great. Well, I'm just going to give folks another minute to write, so before I read what's being written. Okay, so what folks have said here. Oh, thank you. So Daniel said to fix the things that are broken and to ask for forgiveness where you need to. Jerry says to change and realize what mistakes you've made and try to adjust your behavior so this doesn't continue. Miriam, your phrase did pop up, perhaps reframing how I think and forgiving myself. Don't know if you also wrote more. Teshuva, Steve says, Teshuva in the context of the high holidays, an opportunity towards correcting the ways we've fallen short in the past year. And Max says, returning to one's highest self whilst also returning to the oneness. And the floor is open if anyone wants to say something aloud that couldn't go in the chat. So we have a number of really good ideas here. Changing our behavior, reviewing our behavior, evaluating, deciding what needs to change, being clear about how and starting that process, asking forgiveness, also offering forgiveness. Forgiving others, I think, is an important part of this period. We'll talk about that next time. And then we also have this element, and you also said, Miriam, forgiving yourself. And then Max also adds these concepts of returning to one's highest self and also returning to the oneness. So like coming back into more communion with Source. And Shula adds, don't be sorry that there's garbage, take it out. It's like seeing what needs to be let go of and moving it. Practical. So I want to share with you a couple thoughts from other thinkers. Let's see. This is towards the end of the source sheet. And the first thing actually is something which my friend Jacqueline, who I know some of you know, said the other day, which I thought was just so great. She said, resilience and Teshuva are intimately connected. Teshuva is a return not to who I was, but to the self I am yet to be, the self I'm yet to become, my best self. Teshuva is the resilience to keep growing and evolving, trying and trying again. roughly what I remember her saying. But I love that connection between Teshuva and resilience, and also this idea that Teshuva isn't just returning, it's returning to something which hasn't yet been. It's returning to a higher vibration. And Rabbi Kalonymus Kalman Shapiro, who's the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, also has this wonderful image. Would someone read for us source number 8 at the top here? Go on, have a go. Just unmute yourself. Go on, Jerry.
The Hebrew word teshuva means repentance and return. However, as a creative act, teshuva is not a simple return. We return to who we are meant to be, but have not yet become. We return to growth and possibility that has laid dormant within us and not yet flourished. Much as a sculpture lies hidden within a blunt block of stone. That is why the process of teshuva, as painful and even humiliating as it can be, is in fact joyous and hopeful.
I love this image of, similarly, you know, that teshuva is returning, but it's a creative returning. It's a development.
I like the analogy of the block of stone, that we're in there. We just need to work on chipping it out, whatever that means, however it is to each of us, to get that our true self out there.
Right, and it's a creative act. That's right. Yeah. Anyone else want to share a reflection or response on these? 2 thumbs up, says Miriam.
And I also like on number 9 that the resilience is to keep growing and evolving, that we're not a fixed entity.
Right.
Keep growing.
That's right. That's right.
And in reality, do we ever get there? Probably not, but we keep working on it.
That's right.
And what is there? I don't know.
Yeah, there may be no there. Yeah, that's right. And let's we just have a couple minutes. I wanted to share this other text, also came across in the Machzor. Does someone want to read for us number 10? Go on, don't be shy. Anne, go on.
I will. I don't know. Is that Rabbi Bare?
No, Bear.
Rabbi Bear Radoshitz, who later became a Hasidic master, once asked his teacher, the seer of Lublin, "Show me one general way to the service of God." The seer replied, "It is impossible to tell people what way they should take. One way to serve God is through the teachings, another through prayer, another through fasting, and still another is through eating. Everyone should carefully observe what way the heart pulls, and then choose that way with all the strength of one's being."
Right. So what I really liked about this, the reason I brought this text, is the idea. I'll put it back up in a second. I just want to make sure that I copy and paste this great chat that we had. What I really liked about this text, why I brought it in this context, is it seems that it's a very uniquely personal. I love the juxtaposition. For one person, it's through fasting. For another person, it's through eating. You know, these are clearly opposites, right? So there is no general truth. For each person, it's unique. It just goes for me with this creative act of the sculpture that we're becoming, that we're carving of ourselves. And I love what it says at the end. Everyone should carefully observe what way the heart pulls, and then choose that way with all the strength of one's being. So, you know, in some religious traditions, you often find kind of the opposite idea. Like, whichever way your heart tells you to go, do the other thing, suppress your will and your natural inclination, bring yourself into subservience. This is the opposite. It's saying your soul knows the right way to go. Your soul knows. Listen to your soul and then do that, and do it with 100% commitment, full force. I thought that was very encouraging. So we just have another 1 or 2 minutes. So just wanted to open the floor to any final thoughts from anybody.
Can you take away the writing?
Yeah.
The screen. Thanks, honey.
Yeah. Yeah. We can just look at each other.
It kind of to me, goes back to this free will, which I know is mentioned in the Torah many times, that it's our free will to do our own searching, that there's no one path, no one right way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It sounds like we're talking about another face of the holidays. We've been talking about changing us. But the other face of the holidays has just been brought up with the word serve, serving God. And a big theme of the holidays, besides all the confessions, is the theme of HaMelech,
The king.
King. Ein lanu melech ela ata. There is no king but you. And this puts us in the position of being servants of the king, which is looking in another direction than confession.
Mm-hmm.
A more positive direction. How can I serve? How can I bring something positive? Instead of how can I get rid of the negative?
Yeah. Like that. Thank you. So as I put in the chat, the commitment to a higher power. Yeah.
And if we think that the higher power is within each of us as we started, then to serve one another is to serve the higher power.
Yeah. There's a wonderful, I think it's a Shaker hymn that says, if you can't love one another, your sister and brother, how do you expect to love God whom you've never seen? And the refrain is more love, which is beautiful. Any other final thoughts? Well, I thank you again so kindly for coming to have this important conversation with one another. Thank you, Steve. We'll be back, same time, same place, same bat channel. And did you unmute yourself just now? Do you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. This has just been wonderful.
And thank you for letting me in late.
Of course. And I asked Mags to send you the recording of the half of last week's class that we did.
Thank you.
And it's available. Just get in touch with Mags if you want to view our discussion from last time. And I look forward to continuing this conversation next Thursday, 7 p.m.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Everybody. Great to have you here. Bye.
Thank you.